This conversation about building up your blueprint. It's time to take it, cause time is wasted. Go grind and chase it, don't lose it. This generation need integration with information to move with. An inclination that is abiding in entertaining improvement.
Hey, what's going on, Blueprint Nation? Welcome to another dope episode of the Respect My Blueprint show, where we give you the blueprint on how to do shit around here. I'm excited about today's guest because we have not left the stone uncovered when it comes to this particular topic, when it comes to leadership and success. And today's guest, this guy is no rookie in the world of entrepreneurship and leadership. Actually, a 30-year vet to be exact. You know, he has also built a sales team as well as made over $75 million in revenue with his leadership skills, has built and sold a company, built 2 staffing empires for over $3 million each, trained killer sales team, and also raised future CEOs in his own home here, guys. So, man, from boardrooms to yoga mats, my guest here has mastered reinvention as well as coaches leaders on how to find their thing. And guess what? His motto is, I don't help you make money, I help you become more valuable. So that's what we're going to learn in today's episode. How are you doing today, my friend?
Hey, Wes, thanks for having me. I'm doing great. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing awesome, man. I'm here, you know, doing what we do best, right? Networking, breaking bread, conversating, learning, and growing. Glad to see you with us. Great smile, great energy, ready to rock out with us. All right.
Let's do it.
Give us an elevator pitch about who is Mark Aylward and what does he represent?
I've got 3 young adult children, all with an entrepreneurial spirit, and I like to believe making the world a better place. So I get to check that box, which is kind of awesome. Been an entrepreneur my whole life, all of that time spent in the technical staffing space. So helping people find work, and then specifically people with technical background, people that touch the software development lifecycle. And then I built and sold a couple of those companies, training salespeople, teaching leaders, creating leaders, enabling people to become better leaders. That's been part of what I've done the whole time.
Too. So how has you been able to leverage that into helping others do the same as well too?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at the job, at least the way that I did it, I started off as a recruiter working in a permanent placement desk. So we got paid fees for helping people get placed at our client companies. And then that evolved into sales and management and then starting my own business. But I remember the first placement I made, it was a single dad with 3 young boys who was about to lose his house. And he was an electrical engineer. That was before I started the software thing. And I found him a job, and he said I saved his life. And
really?
Man, I can't even talk about it without getting a little emotional. Yeah, it was.
Oh, wow.
I thought to myself, yeah, I think this is why I'm here. And, you know, that's when you help someone find a job and you do it with a level of kindness and consideration in a relationship-based manner. I mean, it's life-changing. It's one of the most important things in someone's life. And so, and I also did it, Wes, I couldn't do it, and I purposely didn't do it kind of standoffish. I dug in deep, and because these are important decisions. So I got in a lot of personal work as well with people, and I became the professional/personal guy because I couldn't do the coaching on the professional stuff without digging into what was making them tick on the personal side. And people enjoyed that. It was not the way they got treated by a lot of other recruiters. So I enjoyed that part of it.
Awesome. So as a matter of fact, you know, I wanted to see if you could share a story of a win testimonial of someone who or a company that you really helped take to the next level. There was experiencing trials and tribulations, and you was able to go ahead and get them to where they need to be.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. I think the one that just popped into my head was he's still a good friend of mine. I don't talk to him as often. Excuse me.
Right. Okay.
Like he's up in New York in the financial services space, but he was a client of mine in Orlando. I won't use his name because I haven't had a chance to thank him or ask him. But he walked me in. I had a meeting with him one day. This is 30 years ago now. And he was a director or VP level guy. He had some clout and some decision making. He brought me into a conference room, unbeknownst to me, with like 10 other guys in there, a couple of women, at like 12, 15 people. And I'm like, holy shit, what's going on here? And then
right, you're like, hey, what is this, man? Are you setting me up here? What's up, right?
It's a testament to the level of relationship we had because he knew he didn't have to tell me. He was just going to surprise me. It was all
Okay. Okay.
He wasn't sticking it to me. He quiets the room down and he goes, I just want everyone to meet Mark Aylward. He's a good friend of mine, and he's the only honest technical recruiter I've ever spoken with. And then he just shut up. And I was like, I didn't even know what to do with that. But he just handed me over to 12 of his decision makers to say, give this guy whatever business he wants. I was astounded and flattered.
Taken back, obviously, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like, what a compliment. What a thing to say about somebody. Of all of my attributes, he goes with integrity. I'm like, thanks, man. That's a good lead.
Yeah. Hey, yeah. Good alley-oop right there. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one of them. I got a few of them, but it's a career fraught with stories, Wes, because if you can imagine, when you're talking to people about really important stuff, the stories you hear are incredible. Just a good, bad, and indifferent. Just incredible.
And with that being said, because I've started in sales when I was a young kid coming out of high school. So working a commission job and working sales has been a natural gift of mine. It's something that I've always loved. I love the excitement and the thrill of it, right? But you've trained hundreds of salespeople and everything. So I wanted to ask you, and more or less for the audience, to give them value here. What's one of the most common mindset or skill setbacks or gaps that you experience when you're training a sales team?
Yeah, it's a couple of things come to mind. I think one of my favorite phrases is that it's much easier to pull someone back than it is to push them forward. So I went after people that were already kind of naturally aggressive. I had a lot of success with athletes, team sport athletes, eldest children, only children, people in retail. If you grew up in an environment where everything wasn't just given to you, you had to fight for stuff, I can work with that. If you grew up entitled, like I tell the story all the time, I don't care about college degrees for salespeople. I never did. People would say to me, well, what do you ask somebody if they go to college for a couple of years and then stop? I said, I ask them why they stopped. And if somebody tells me they stopped because they got bored, I wish them a pleasant day and ask them to leave. And if somebody tells me my dad got sick from cancer and I had to go home and run the family business with my mom, and as soon as he passed and we got it built up enough that we could sell it, we sold the organization. I went back, and here I am talking to you because I want to get back into sales. I'm going to ask that guy what time he can start on Monday.
Right. Okay.
It's not the story. It's how you tell the story. It's the context behind the story. Are you looking to blame people? Or are you looking to blame circumstances? Or are you taking responsibility for your actions? It's the most important thing. So I like the aggressive people. And then the other thing that surprises me is the way that people in the beginning will allow themselves to be walked all over. They will allow other people to treat them with disrespect that's not warranted because they didn't do or say anything wrong. They just caught somebody at a bad time. And that opens up the conversation about most of the rejection that you will get in sales has nothing to do with you. You've caught someone
nothing to do with you as a salesperson.
Nothing. You've caught someone at a bad time.
Right.
They had a bad experience with some other recruiter, and they're throwing you into that bucket.
Right.
You. And I used to tell people all the time, because I would listen to calls in the training process. I had a headset on where I could hear both sides of the call, and the other person they were talking to could not hear me. It was an excellent coaching thing, and it was legal and all that kind of stuff, and it wasn't a personal thing. But I would find people talking to someone, and I would hear the other person be extremely disrespectful. And after the phone call was over, I would pull the person inside. I say, look, this is what I want you to say next time somebody does something like that to you. I want you to say, excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have to ask you something. I need you to consider sharing with me what I've done or said to make you so upset, to treat me with this level of disrespect, because I don't believe I did anything to warrant that. And I'd love your feedback on that. It just completely shuts people up. It breaks them down. It makes them take responsibility for their behavior. But most people look at me and go, are you crazy? You want me to say that? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, like you.
I do. And you know what? My experience tells me, Wes, 90% of those people will apologize.
Wow.
Because it was something my wife just left me, or, I was late to work.
Wow, you never know what it is.
So didn't get a project in on time, or my kid's sick, or it could be anything, but it's got nothing to do with you. Because people by nature aren't necessarily just like that. Most people aren't mean. Most people aren't.
Yeah. True,
So,
true.
and the other 10% I tell them are assholes. And you know what? It's really good to find out who the assholes are quick. Because then you don't have to spend any more time with them. You know, that's one of the most compelling lessons that I could ever teach anybody. And when they get it, man, talk about momentum.
It's like the light bulb goes off.
Confidence goes off. Yeah, confidence and courage. Yep.
Awesome. So here's another question. Now, of course, you've been around hundreds of sales closers, appointment setters and sales teams and everything. So I'm pretty sure you have a good knack of spotting talent, right? So if you're working with someone and you notice they're not so strong in closing, they have the ambition, they want to be in sales, right? But they may lack a few things. What is some of the advice, or how do you normally help someone who just is not able to get over that hump?
Well, yeah, it's probably speaking to one of my weaknesses, which is getting rid of people quickly. I hang on to people. We did the standard stuff. We would give somebody a chance. Although I got to tell you, Wes, and when I look back on it, when I got an inkling that someone might not work out, they never worked out. My instinct
just like that. Yeah, I hear you.
For sound, but I always wanted to give people more of a chance. I remember a friend of mine said it to me one day because I was whining about this. Like, I got to get rid of people faster. He's like, dude, the fact that you don't get rid of people fast just means you're not a dick. And I'm like,
so
okay, I'll take that. And I think that this is another interesting thing, Wes, because I think I complain about clients doing this all the time. They have a culture, whatever the culture is. They have an environment, whatever the environment is. They have systems and processes in place, whatever they are. But they don't often consider, I need to hire people that fit into this system, that fit into these.
Right. And I agree with that. Culture is very important. I think sometimes people overlook that's the intangible that, you want to create a culture that, whichever it is, whether it's super professional and cut and dry, or you want to make it relaxed, fun going, friendly environment, whatever that culture is, it cannot be oil and water on the team that you have working together.
Well, and particularly with regard to systems. So I spent my entire career hiring mostly people without any experience at all. Young people. And because I found when I tried to hire people with experience at other recruiting agencies, and it took me a second to figure this out, they weren't trained well. They had bad habits. I had to reprogram them. And that's a very difficult thing to do. When someone gets something in their DNA, it's very difficult to pull it back out.
Right.
I decided, do I really need experience? Because the first thing I want you to do is pick up the phone and talk to people you've never talked to before and say things that you're unfamiliar with. So really all you need is a spine, is a big set of balls, depending on your gender, I suppose. But it's if you have that and you have a level of integrity, which includes this level of personal accountability, and then I plugged them into my training and my systems, which were specifically geared towards people with no experience. So I dumbed that training down, and those processes would probably be considered restrictive in the eyes of a senior person. I don't need this specific detail of system or process. So that a senior person would bump up against my system and processes, and a junior person, the right person, would fit right in and say, I accept these as gospel because they make sense to me, and he's not asking me to do anything that's outside of my moral boundaries, and so let's go. And
let's do it. Yeah. Okay.
The acceptance, the loyalty, the appreciation. I just always preferred that vibe as opposed to somebody who felt they knew how to do everything and didn't want to listen to the way that I wanted to do things. And I would tell people, and when it was time to go, look, this isn't for everybody. The way that I do this is not the only way to do this. Okay. So I'm not suggesting that you're wrong or you're bad. We just don't fit. Right. So you're better off somewhere else and I'm better off with someone else. And that's okay.
That's it. Yeah, of course. There's no sense of, creating friction or try to, fit a square peg in a round hole type of idea, right? It's like, all right, fuck it. It don't work. Let's keep it moving. That's it, right?
Yep.
And which one of the, you mentioned this to you, most of our viewers are new entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs. And And I've went through this personally, so I know you experienced this, and I want your thoughts on it. Hiring a mentor, right? When you start off your business, and you probably could attest to this, when you start off, you always, this is your baby. No, there's nobody doing better than me. I know what it takes, right? I know what I need to be able to get my baby going. But the lack of having a mentor and not wanting to invest in yourself and getting a mentor 9 times out of 10 is the biggest roadblock that a lot of new entrepreneurs face, and is hard for them to overcome, right? And you being in the score chapter, being a score mentor, you know, of course, you've mentored others, but in your career, you see how important it is. So if you could just highlight to the audience how important it is to have an actual mentor, especially when you're starting out.
Yeah, well, I got lucky. I bumped into my mentor through a referral of another young woman that I'd worked with for a couple of years when I was telling her a story on the golf course that my life had just exploded with an incoming child, and
Oh man,
I wasn't married. So, but my instinct were step up, dude. Time to take care. It's adulting time.
time to do it, right?
And so I was talking to her over a round of golf. She was a great recruiter. And she said, well, you should meet my buddy Paul. And I said, okay. And we set up a meeting. And I'll never forget that meeting. It was like 4 hours. And he while he was interviewing me, he almost taught me everything he knew about how to interview somebody because he was really, really good at it.
Well, was he doing it intentionally? Was it just a casual conversation, or it was more?
He was contemplating, unbeknownst to me at the beginning, hiring me to help him start a company, a consulting company. He saw him identify me in the process, like the recognition in his eyes and the questions that he asked very early on. I want this guy. Now let me find out who he is. Let me find out more about who he is. So he was my mentor for 5 years. And the first company that I built and sold, I built with him. He financed it. I did all the work. He just told me what to do because I didn't know anything about it. And so I had that experience when I went and did it solo without a mentor. But the second example I have is a guy that we hired for $10,000 a month for 3 months. And I remember because I couldn't get my 2 partners at the time to convince that we should hire him. We had hit $10 million in revenue. And I don't know that this is unique to my industry. I think it's probably a decent number for most industries. At 10 million, it becomes a different company, right?
Of course.
Up to 10 million. And he said this to us too. He was a retired guy, lots of credentials, 10 grand. We're going to pay a guy 10 grand a month. That's not going to sell anything. What are you, out of your mind? Right. Well, and you know what, Wes, he saved our ass because it was recession time. And he said to us, he said, you guys are excellent at selling, but you don't do anything else well. Right. And now you're selling $10 million and you're pulling a good profit out of it. You don't know where your money's coming from. You don't know, you have no cash flow reports. You don't have P&L and balance sheets that you consult on a regular basis. You don't have any formal accounting. The woman that takes care of your books is a bookkeeper. She's not doing any forecasting. You're not doing any budgeting. So it was all this proactive financial rigor that you can't go past 10 million without that rigor. I mean, whether it's QuickBooks or Excel spreadsheets. But and he finally said, and I unfortunately 3rd month in, I think we're going to have to let her go and hire somebody that's a formal CPA that's got a degree and has some public accounting practice.
Right. Okay.
And so, and the second thing he did, so financial rigor would be my piece of advice for anyone, because if you start that at the beginning, when there are no numbers and there is no money, it's so much easier than plugging into a system that's got 10 million in revenue coming in and God knows where it's going, right?
It's like whack-a-mole. It's like, whoa.
Everyone's making enough money that no one's complaining about anything. No one sees the train coming. He said, and the second thing he said is you're trying to be too many things to too many different people. Pick one technology in one geographic area and perhaps even one industry and get so good at that it's impossible for anyone else to be any better than you because you're an expert at this one thing. So that also is a difficult thing for most entrepreneurs, and most people refer to it as find your niche, right? Find your specialty. Well, You can diversify later when you're making enough money to go spend money on diversification. But to get off the ground, being an expert at one very specific thing is much easier, because it's much easier to become that expert if you're only focused on one thing. And those two lessons were golden for me.
Absolutely, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, because again, I'm go back to the point the point I shared, where you have a lot of new entrepreneurs. They so super excited, right? They want to do this, they want to do it. They spread themselves thin. And I actually had a show with one guest, and we called it the shiny red ball syndrome, where all of a sudden you're doing something and a new toy comes in a toy box. It's like, oh wow, let me go ahead and throw this in there as well too, right? I like to tell people the same thing. You want to go deep, then wide. Go deep into a niche, conquer it, then start going wide a little more.
That's a good way.
So
yeah, that's a good way.
Let me ask you, especially nowadays with terms such as serial entrepreneur, side hustle, multiple streams of income, and everything, how do you balance that? Is it still possible to be able to be that serial entrepreneur, but at the same sense follow the philosophy you just said, where you need to lock in on something?
It's almost required, but it's also, full transparency. It's a constant struggle for me, because if you think about what I do, Wes, it's like I give advice to people that are in professional states of transition, I guess would be one way to say it. Who doesn't benefit from that? I can help everyone, right? But I can't help everyone. So then I go, because you can't market to everybody. You can't sell to everybody.
Right.
That messaging doesn't work. So I'm forced in the consulting business to make choices. And the choices I've come to are around leadership, and then around men who have had, as I've begun to say it, have had their confidence shaken. Okay, so like here I am, I get into the recruiting business, I make a ton of money, I got a family, a big house, a couple cars, everything that anybody could want. And then one day it's all over, and everything's gone. I had to sell the company, all the money's gone to the lawyers and in settlements, and it was just a ridiculous set of circumstances. So, that hardship thing, it's something else. But that was how my confidence was shaken. I went from confident, wealthy guy to what the hell was that?
Oh, like what the hell just happened? Yeah.
Who am I now? Like, I got nothing. Well, no, you got 3 kids that love you and wanted to live with you. So I like this notion of a man who's just got the shit beat out of him, right? And maybe that's not the way to describe it, because hardship's hardship. I mean, you probably got a list of them, right? You can't get to our age, you can't get to your age or my age without some hardship. It just doesn't.
Yeah, we're going through shit in life, right?
Yeah,
like life be lifing, right? Come on.
So I love the empathy I can bring to a man who just got the shit kicked out of him, and more importantly, that man is also full of potential because he's proven himself before. And now it's about legacy. It's about serving others. It's about purpose. It's bigger, right? So when I can attach the man to the leadership, to the hardship, I like that, because that's me, right? And so I have that story accessible to me with context, with stories, and it's purposeful. I'm like, no, dude, if you listen to me, I can get you out of what you're in right now. I promise, right? And I can say that with confidence and sincerity. The only way that we're not going to get you out of this is if you give up. That's the only way.
That's the only thing, yeah. Consistency is key.
So that's
key.
That's the niche story, but it haunts me all the time, because all I have to do is have some young guy go, "Can you help me?" I'll go, sure. You're not in my market, but yeah, I can help you because you're a human.
Yeah, let's see what we come on. Let me get you credit.
But it's really more about attracting those people to me based on my message. And if my message is focused on middle-aged men that have had their confidence shaken, that have been a leader and aspire to be one again or become a better leader, that's a good session. That's a couple of really good sessions. We can have a lot of fun.
I'm assuming you deal with a lot of men that hit like that midlife crisis situation. Maybe like they'll go through a terrible divorce, or they'll end up, like you say, the company ends up failing or something, or they having personal problems at home. So You know, is that, I'm assuming that's probably the typical audience you're dealing with, you know.
Well, I am. I am. Yeah. And I probably should have some disclaimers out there because my lead is I'm not a doctor, I'm not a licensed therapist, but I guarantee you I'm just as good or better than most of them out there just because, well, because I care, but because I had so much practice too, you know.
Right.
So
Okay.
yeah, no, but it's not just a devastating circumstance. It's sometimes it's just creeping up on you. It's like, well,
Yeah, you
um,
don't ever know it.
I'm bored, or I hate my job, or I hate my boss, or they're making me go back into the office, or whatever. It's like
Whatever it is.
things happened because being bored might be the worst of all, right? At least
Right.
at least if you hate your boss, you got some emotion, you know? But a lot of people sticking with what they are doing, even though they're completely discontent with it because they don't believe they have any options. And that's the other wonderful place that I can take somebody is let's talk about how many options you have. Because I've been creating options for people for 35 years now. It's 35 now, not just 30.
Man, okay.
So so if I've had that kind of practice helping people find out what their options might be, I think we might be able to find a few options for you. And as soon as you
No.
open,
And so let me, here's another question because I related to this when I was young. So how you say, how to find your thing is my thing, right? So what's the first step someone should take in the circumstance you just mentioned, right? They're like, I'm bored, I hate my boss, or I don't know what it is. What's the first thing you do, or a piece of advice you share with somebody that's unfulfilled to help find that fulfillment?
well, I begin most of what I do with questions. Like I'll give you an example because
Okay.
I don't have enough context with what you've told me. Assuming you're the
Right.
potential prospect or customer of mine, I would need to know a lot more from you first before I started telling you what I thought I might be able to do. And that really looks the same for most people. I remember helping my girlfriend's daughter years ago, and I had never met her. We just started dating, and she asked me when she found out what I did, hey, my daughter's in this pickle. You think you could help her with a conversation? I said, sure, I'll talk to her. And we met for breakfast. And I said, so after we said hello and stuff, and she was nervous. I'm apparently I can be a little intimidating. I'm a big guy. Maybe that has something to do with it. But it wasn't my intention. But I just said, so tell me what you do. And she said, I'm an office manager. And I said, what does that mean? And she said, well, I manage an office of people. I said, how many people do you manage? What's your, what do you
Digging
do?
in deeper.
What do you do all day? What do you do first thing? What do you do last thing? What do you do in the middle of the day? Tell me about your day. I do this, I do this, I do this, I do that. What's that system that you're using that you just told me about where somebody buys something and it triggers something with an invoice and then supply chain triggers replenishment and the order is fulfilled? That system of manufacturing and distribution and supply chain, tell me about that system. Oh, she goes, I said, are you using a system that someone else implemented, or were you part of the design of that system? And she lit up. She said, oh, no, when I first got here they didn't have any system at all, and I was a big part of building that system. And I said,
Ooh.
that's what we need to do. We need to find another company that does not yet have a system, and you're going to go in as an expert and help them build that system. Because that's what juices you up. That's what makes you light up.
Right.
So
I can see how she lit up in her eye when she said that.
just like that. Yeah, just like
Yeah.
that. I mean, it changed the course of her tone of voice, everything. It was just like, so it's like context. Why? What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? I even have a t-shirt that says, what does that mean on it? Because somebody told me I said it.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? I use that all the time because people are like, well, I'm a director. I'm like, really? What films have you directed? Oh, well, that's not the kind of director I am. Well, see how ludicrous it is to say that to me and expect me to understand it at all?
Yeah.
In my experience, no one volunteers the kind of context that I need to do my job. So I have to go get it. And I'm very
Makes sense.
good
Makes
at it.
sense.
I very much enjoy it. And I can do it while people maintain their dignity and their privacy. I don't need to know things that I don't need to know. And you're going
Right.
to tell me a lot of stuff, and you're going to trust that I'm not going to share this with anyone else. And I never have, because it's all personal. How much you
Of
make,
course.
your children's names, everything. So yeah, no, that's what I do with just about everybody. Why? What does that mean? Why? What does that mean? And then after, I don't know, 5 levels, sometimes 10 levels of probing, okay, I see what's going on here. Not only can I help you, this is how I think we can begin the process. And then the second step in that, Wes, is always the same as well. What do you do? Who are you? And those are 2 different things. What do you do and who are you are 2 different things. No one tells you who they are. Everyone tells you what they do, right? And so when I want to, and who you are is how you make decisions, right? So that's very
obviously
important.
That's a personality, right?
Yeah,
Your genetic makeup.
You know? Yeah, it's very important for me to understand those things. And so then it becomes about their story, because people then everyone has a story, right? And everyone has a story. They call it the hero's journey, right? Everyone has one of these, or is about to have one of these, and it's a challenge that's overcome and lessons learned from the overcoming of that challenge. That's the most compelling thing about anyone, in my opinion. But no one knows how to tell their story, and so we spend a lot of time on that, and that begins the process of dreaming. That begins the process of opening up the box that we've put ourselves in for 20 years. We did that to ourselves when we were 17 because our guidance counselor said, you should do this. Well, you're 45 years old now and you hate that. So what are you doing it for? You know, what's up with that?
Yeah. That is true, right?
And some people, Wes, have a sense of urgency when this recognition takes place. It's like, oh man, I'm halfway home. I'm going to spend the other half doing what I want to do, because this guy just helped me understand that I could do that, you know. And then the doing it's just tactics, which I know all those too, or most of them. So
Man,
yeah.
So let me here's my next question. So when you're going in and consulting for a company, what do you target most? The sales team or the leadership? The founder, CEO, and the C-suite executives?
Yeah, so I don't do a lot of corporate stuff.
Okay.
I actually just came off of a corporate client I had for a year, and he found me on LinkedIn and said to me in an in-mail, I like the way that you think. Do you offer leadership training? Because I got a lot of content on LinkedIn. I got hundreds of articles, hundreds of videos. I mean, it'd be very easy for you to get an idea of how I think pretty quickly. And it's pretty, I'd like to think it's consistent and it's transparent and it's authentic. And those are very important things for me. But I thought to myself, well, I never called it that, but I've been doing it for 30 years. So yes, I do. And then we arranged a Zoom call, you know, and that's another thing for salespeople. Just get the deal, man. Apologize later, right? You know you can.
Right. Just get the deal. I love it. Right.
You know you can do this. You've done this. So just be transparent. So I got him on the phone. He gets on a Zoom call with me like he's my best friend. He was jumping out of his seat. He's like, oh, man,
wow.
I feel like I know you. I've been watching your videos for months now. I'm like, dude, cool. I said, so we're not talking about a sale here. You're already sold. You just want me to tell you what it looks like. Okay, let's do that. And I said, full transparency, I've never done this before in a formal, structured, systemic way. I've just done it for 35 years. And so if you're interested in building the first program that I deliver with me for your people, then we can have fun with that. And he just thought that was a great idea. And so we customized a plan for him. And it's all up here. It was just formalizing the structure and the order. And I think most people do this with training. They just train people on too much stuff. So I tried to pull it back and just get people trained on a couple. But that was an IT organization, and he was the chief information officer. And so I'm doing online more stuff to get more people to poke at me and say, tell me more. You know, I'm not really doing a whole lot of outward prospecting and cold calling, but most of the people that I touch are people that at least know somebody I know. So most of my stuff's one-on-one right now, and I'm working on that too to scale it out, make it bigger, thinking about groups and masterminds and more than just one-on-one, because I think in my experience, when you get a bunch of people together that are somewhat like-minded, trying to achieve something similar, everybody benefits from the energy of everybody else and the ideas of everybody else. So
makes sense.
And I can scale that easier than the one-on-one. So those things are works in motion, much like my niching down to the man who's had his confidence shaken in midlife.
True.
And so, But yeah, that guy could be me getting divorced, or it could just be some guy waking up one day going, I'm 50 years old, man, and there's a lot of shit I still haven't done. And it's time.
Yeah, there's still come on, man. There's still a lot of gas in that tank.
Yeah.
So come on, man. Let's get rocking and rolling, right?
I got another gear. I just haven't used it in a while, and it's laying fallow. Let's activate it. It's fun.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? As another, as we're ready to wrap up, one of the final questions I want to ask you is, the show here is all predicated. The premise of the show is building your blueprint. And again, not only just in entrepreneurship, but personally as well too, whether it's family, home, life, whatever the case may be. So if you could share with the audience, what's one piece of essential critical advice they would need to build their blueprint, whether it's professionally or personally, based upon your expertise and your experience, what would that one piece of advice be?
Well, if the assumption is that they're going to try and do this on their own, then that's one thing. Obviously, finding a mentor can accelerate things dramatically. And I could talk about mentorship for hours in terms of how to get one and all that. But if we're going to assume this person's kind of somewhat limited resources and kind of has to at least get started on his own or her own, I would say you don't need money to start something. You don't.
You don't need money.
No, you don't, because not today. You don't. You need an idea, and you need some people that are already predisposed to be interested in that idea. So you don't really have to do much other than educate them as to why your approach to this particular idea is unique. Like, for instance, I can pick up the phone right now and call a software engineer and say, if I had a job for you that was better than the one that you're doing right now, would you be interested in chatting with me about that for 30 minutes? Very few people are going to say no to that. Like, what does that mean? That's what we do.
Yeah, like, how does that look like? Really?
Yeah, what is that? I want to know what that looks like. Yeah, me too. I got a bunch of questions for you. You can start your business and actually send an invoice to somebody without spending a dime. And that's an oversimplification, but it's true. And I'll map it out back to the brick and mortar days, because I know you've got to wrap up. We didn't get A office space. We got B office space and paid half the rent. We didn't buy new furniture. We bought used furniture from a warehouse where entrepreneurs went with their furniture to die because they spent 50 grand on furniture before they made a sale on anything else. I didn't hire senior people. I hired junior kids with college degrees for 25 grand out of college. So it was like, so there's some money being spent there. But my point in that exaggeration is people spend money on things that are completely unnecessary to generate revenue before they generate revenue. Most of the money that I've spent in my businesses to reinvest in my business was spent from the profits made from my business, not outside investors, not personal money, not nothing. I wasn't spending in the hopes of generating something in return. I was generating something in return, knowing that I'd be able to spend later. And so that's the biggest mistake I see people make.
Wow. And that's all. I like that. Having an idea and having people predisposed to the idea is the key, right? And you're absolutely right, especially if you could start off with family and friends. You don't need to be out trying to, sell to the marketplace or have everybody purchase everything. Hey, just test drive it with some family and friends and see if you can go ahead and conquer that arena, and that'll give you a good sample size to be able to say, hey, I'm onto something here. Maybe I can go ahead. Now I can worry about getting the money later, right?
Yeah, and Apple's a perfect example. I mean, everybody lines up for the new iPhone, and then the new iPhone comes out and it's got a lot of bugs in it, and people complain about it. And Apple's really basically just saying, we know someone's going to buy a bunch of these, and then we're going to get a bunch of feedback, and then we'll just go out and fix that. And that'll be version 2, right? And we'll sell that one. And everybody's going to love version 2. But the only reason we got to version 2 is because you guys told us what was wrong with version 1.
With version 1. Yeah.
After you bought the phone from us, right? There's magic in that, dude. There really is.
Absolutely. Very valid point. Well, wow, Mark, you've been super dope in sharing your expertise. I think the audience, well, I'm not saying I know the audience, especially the men, the middle-aged men here, they're probably still tuned in right now. And they're probably salivating on like, wow, this guy here, he really can help me out, right? He really can put some value in my life here. Man, my wife just left me. The house is burning. The car didn't start this morning.
Well, yeah, just don't forget about the people that are just bored, because that one might be That one might be the hardest of all, because it sneaks up on you. It surprises you. Sometimes we don't even know we're bored, you know?
It's so subtle and insidious, right? You
Yep.
don't even know that it just pops up on you,
Yep.
right?
Good words.
And so with that being said, if someone wants to reach out to you and they want to be able to go ahead and work with you, and if they want to, get some of the value you just shared, how would they be able to do so?
Well, I think one of them is passive and the other one is active. So the passive stuff would be go to my LinkedIn profile and my website and get access to my YouTube channel and my LinkedIn articles. Everything I write and everything I talk about is in some way, shape, or form how to get better. And that whole valuable issue is really what it's all about. Because like if you're the most valuable person in a particular space, you don't have to worry about job interviews and demand. It's going to come your way, right? And so that's the passive way. Consume my content and maybe you'll learn something. It'd be hard not to learn at least a little something. And then
It's a little something, right?
something, and then get on my calendar, or get on my calendar first, because it's a 30-minute freebie, and that's where I go that's where I do all the why, and the what does that mean, and at the end of that, I promise everybody a couple things. One is I'll tell you if I can help you, and if I can, I'll tell you how, and if I can't, I'll tell you why. And then I'll give you at least a couple of free resources to get the storytelling and the passion search and the vision thing, because a lot of that, you asked me what even further back, if someone were to start, it's self-reflection. That's what it is. It's
self-reflection. Yeah.
That's the exercise. And I can just take you on that journey and get you farther a lot faster, because it's impossible to do it yourself as fast as I could do it for you. It's just, I've done it a million times.
Right.
So that's it. Passive and active, both. I would encourage both.
Absolutely. In which, gentlemen, ladies as well, but particularly the gentlemen, reach out to Mark, because if you're bored out there, and you know what I mean, listen, if you can't find a game to watch on a Sunday afternoon, but they'll be able to reach out to you, right?
Yeah. If you have the spelling of my last name, which is 𝙂𝙧𝙠, I'm easy to find.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Mark, this has been a phenomenal, great conversation. Again, I believe that even if we're able to help, a segment of the audience of the middle-aged men here that could definitely be able to get that level of fulfillment, man, we did our job today. And that's all that we could ask for. So I'm super excited we was able to have this show, and I'm looking forward to potentially doing an encore, right?
Sure, I'd love to. No, that was a lot of fun, Wes. You asked some great questions. I hope it was helpful to your peeps, and I'd look forward to hearing from any and all of them. And if I do, I'll certainly keep you posted.
Absolutely. Well, listen, ladies and gentlemen in particular, thanks for tuning in on another dope episode of the Respect My Blueprint podcast. As you can see, we do not fall short on giving you value, as well as giving you the keys and strategies to the blueprint, as you can see above me here. And you can catch episodes every Monday as well as Friday at 8 p.m. on YouTube, Spotify, as well as Apple Podcasts, as we're also going to give you solo episodes Wednesday at 7 p.m. But thanks for tuning in. Thanks for tapping in. And as always, guys, we will catch you on the flip side. Enjoy yourselves and be great out there. Bye-bye.
Blueprint. This conversation about building up your blueprint. It's time to take it, cause time is wasted. Go grind and chase it, don't lose it. This generation need integration with information to move with. An inclination that is abiding in entertaining improvement. Yep, Wesley Paul with Blueprint. This guests are exclusive. Get on and tune in and then learn some new tips about credit, finance, investment. A nice chance to get rich and buy land. Flip it, quick 9 bands. Learn all the skills from Wesley did it. Learn how to build successful business. Run up a mill and get the digits. Run up a mill. Look, safe place where guests are speaking. Based off financial freedom. All facts, no cap, believe it. Podcast, you have to see it.